Hello everybody, welcome to G4G here on YouTube. Today we are in Marvel Avengers Alliance. The background music is brought to you by the Descent Free Space OST. If you're not familiar with Descent Free Space, it was an older space sim along the vein of Microsoft's Starlancer and Freelancer, which has no relation to Free Space. Excellent game. If you get the chance to play Descent Free Space 1 and or 2, I highly recommend you do so. Great joypad game, especially if it has a throttle, and it does come from the Descent universe. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about Cloak and Dagger. It's basically going to be a discussion video, and we're going to talk a lot about her in terms of who she teams up well with and who might be a decent counter for her in PvP. On my stream today, I had to do the 5 PvP tasks, and I ran into a Cloak and Dagger on defense, which I was hoping to do because I wanted to see how the AI controls Cloak and Dagger, and by all means the AI unfortunately is not stupid with Cloak and Dagger. So she played pretty close to how a human would play her. I do believe there was a blackout in there, and there was definitely some healings from light in the darkness. I saw this at least twice. I actually lost it because the agent went first, used the lunacy, which prevented my Nul from being able to get out the despair, and the you're not worthy, and then things went downhill from there as she was able to clean the team up pretty well and keep them healed. I do believe right now she is, well, I don't know if you could say that she's bugged, but she is healing through despair, and I do believe that she's cleansing through Pesty, which probably also means the scroll of Runamaron. Now, Light in the Darkness is bugged, and it is not restoring stamina, although it does seem to be doing the other thing. See how it says restores a small amount of health and stamina? It seems to restore quite a good amount of health, but the stamina is unfortunately going nowhere. Now, I don't know if Charm of Darkness, which is the single target, is bugged. At least not as of yet. So, what can we ISO her with? Well, definitely the covert ISO if you have it. The ability to spread around her level 1, once you turn her 15 and get her combat reflexes and everything, is certainly very good. Also, because she is an infiltrator, Yukemi is pretty solid. Sting is not too bad. You have Blurred, which is start combat with mirror image. That's okay, but I think Yukemi's better in the long run. There's the covert ISO, which I think is pretty strong, and Lingering, which is the one that applies Poisoned, is okay, but I think covert from the infiltrator class is the best way to go. And then, depending on who you team her up with, there are several other ones that may work out. You could possibly go mystical to make her magic, especially if you're teaming her up with Nul and you want to hit phased people, but then of course you are dealing with Angrir, possibly getting in her face. Blood magic is not too bad if you think you're going to be running into a lot of Spitfires trying to kick her ass, and more on that in a moment. I really wouldn't go Eye Bite. Hair Trigger stupid. There's Mystical, which is, you know, not necessarily a bad idea if you team her up with Nul. Good way to get magic stacks. Resonant is not a good way to go for her unless you went Resonant Mystical, which is, you know, a possibility. You could go with the Rising Up ISO. The single target attacks apply Rising Up. That's not too bad because she does like the Finest Hour buffs, and they're pretty solid. She's already got the higher the stamina, the more damage she does. She's already got that built in to a few moves. So that's probably not a good idea. Dodgy's not such a bad idea. It may help her with Spitfire. And, I mean, that is something you really do need to consider on that. Grit, probably not. But this Risen Force, this is the one that I think might also be fairly solid for her, as it may enable her to get her Rising Up buffs going faster. When she uses her level 1, she gets Rising Up, and then that single target, which would work with the ISO. So it's probably a good way to get her going really fast. So now let's talk about ISOs. On Bright Blades, it is only ranged and nothing else. So you've got some options, but they're somewhat limited. Aiming is not too bad, especially if you have other ranged. Bursting, I don't know about, because there has not been a whole lot of shielding going on lately. Powerful's not really that good, because it's not a strong hitting attack to begin with, so none of the strength ones or the crit ones would be that good. Hemorrhaging is not too bad if you are running some other bleed on the team, but my guess, really, aiming is the way to go. Especially if there's other ranged on the team, because then you're setting them up, and, you know, you're spreading it around when you do your combat reflexes. Over here, we have a debuff action. At this point, you have a lot of options. You can go with Endemic to really seal in all the pain that she puts, unless you know, have Pesty or the Scroll of Runemeroth. You could also go with Lethal, and you could also go with Ailing, which attacks stamina. Excuse me, burdening. So you have a stamina drain, you have despair, and you have the Ailing one. So there's a lot you can do, and that all depends on who her partners are. I mean, if you have the Ionic Devourer, you're not going to run the Lethal. If you have the Scroll of Runemeroth or running Pesty, you probably don't need Ailing. So it just kind of all depends upon who her partner is. Over here, it's ranged and ranged, so again, we're not looking at a whole lot. Now, Calamitous is not too bad. However, it is already stealthy and it's psychic energy. I think Calamitous would be a waste, because Calamitous drops the damage a bit, and these two are huge hitters that can wipe out teams. So nerfing that is probably not the greatest of ideas. Aiming is not that great of an idea now, because of the fact that hopefully this is going to kill people, and you're not really going to be following up on people that much after this attack. Probably the best way to go. Crit is not that good because she doesn't have a high amount to crit. Powerful is probably the way to go, as it will affect both of them. And then here, finally, you have buff heal, buff heal. Aware ISO is not particularly bad. However, she should probably have combat reflexes from activating her infiltrator bonus. But if you wanted to double her up, you could go with aware and then go with her close quarter combat, activate her scrapper bonus, and still get 2 for the price of 1. Blessed is not bad, as it increases the healing that she takes, but likely this blessing occurs before or after her own heal, so I don't think it will increase her own heal. But if you were healing her later, like from your agent or a partner, Blessed is not too bad. Gracious is okay. Gracious is definitely good, especially if it continues not to restore stamina. If they do fix that, Gracious still could be good, as it may actually top off the team. And Rising is not too bad either. And the reason why I say that is we know that Iron Fist has just been taking complete hits to his manhood for several seasons now, and for months. And I do believe that is because they knew they were doing something with people like Cloak and Dagger and Angrir, and they maybe thought it was too powerful to have such massive healers and cleaners and just have so many of them. I disagree with that highly because that's only a PvP focus. You're going to have daily missions where you can't bring agents, and you're going to have, you know, heroics and everything. I think if there's multiple people that do the same thing, it's not necessarily bad because they may not always be teamed up together. They may be isolated, but yes, in PvP, having an Iron Fist and an Angrir and an Iron Fist and a Cloak and Dagger and a Blue Marvel just could be absolute overkill for the whole clean and heal set over here. Manifesting is also not too bad of an idea, as it will give crit to everybody, and when you use this, you will get a crit. So really, you've got a lot that can go here. Any of the ones that are available are actually not bad. So that's definitely a tough decision to make over there. And since this can only be used once, but then this is up every 2 rounds, any of the team-based ones, of course, are really solid. So now, who can she team up with that really helps her out? Well, a lot of people offensively are predicting her and Angrir together. And that's very good. She can also go good with anybody else who would like to take advantage of Despair or Ailing or the Straining if you go that way. So she can stand in for kind of a Worthy as a debuff giver, you know, provided Blackout isn't screwed up. Now, it is already catastrophic, but it isn't stealthy and it isn't subtle, so don't forget about that. One good partner of hers, I think, will be Blue Marvel. And the reason being is antimatter manipulation over here is a quick action that does not have a starting cooldown. And like Heimdall, it gives you all of the rising up buffs: accuracy, attack, defense, and evasion. So like Heimdall, you are getting all of them. And he's going to be a generalist, so he can equip morale boost and then something else. So definitely Blue Marvel has got it going on with her. Heimdall is another one, because Heimdall is one of the only people that guarantees all of the rising up buffs, and that comes off of Yallarhorn. See, grants agile, focus, fortified, and strength, and it doesn't say a chance. So it gives them all to her, and that's really, really good. So if you ran a Neurotrope and Heimdall, you've got multiple chances that they may go before her to give her some buffs. Also up for consideration is Star-Lord. Star-Lord is definitely a good character to run with her, because Star-Lord's Spray and Pray will give her rising up buffs. And there are ways of outfitting Star-Lord to constantly hose down your team with buffs. One of the easiest ways to do that is the Hair Trigger ISO. He can use his Stealthy or any of his single target ones over here, and he will always follow up with Spray and Pray, which will buff Cloak and Dagger. That certainly might be a big possibility with offensively tilted defense teams. Also, if you wanted to get really, really sketchy now, this causes an internal debate as to what are you going to do with the covert ISO, is that if you went with Infiltrator Star-Lord, or otherwise known as Movie Lord, you can give him the triggered ISO and the covert ISO. This way, every time he activates his combat reflexes, he's hosing down your team with rising up. So he's doing double duty. He's giving it to your team while on offense, based off of the triggered ISO, and these two over here, and he's also potentially countering the team and buffing it up. So that causes an internal debate of, well, where is the one covert ISO I have going to be better suited for Cloak and Dagger or Star-Lord? It kind of depends. It depends on if you want to go more for the Purged or more for trying to buff her up and keep her buffed even if she is cleansed. So that, of course, is very interesting. Then you have the people that work off of what she gives. And those are pretty much your delirium exploiters. So one of the things you can do there is Kuurth. And you need the Dazing Augmented ISO 8, Brawl, and or Stonebreaker. Gains Exploit Stun and Exploit Delirium. If you have her with Revengeance, when she counters, she doesn't counter, she will be countering with Stonebreaker or Road to Ruin depending upon what attacked her. And since this guarantees, that means a melee attack directed at Kuurth will cause Stonebreaker, which will exploit Delirium, which is of course Cloak and Dagger's level 2. You have Enchantress, who gains buffs off of her Emerald Wave. More damage from her Emerald Wave will work. And you also have Dr. Morbius. Dr. Morbius exploits Delirium also. And unfortunately, that's another one that causes you to think about where is the covert ISO going to be best suited. For him doing Fly By Night, exploiting Delirium, or on your Cloak and Dagger. Again, that depends on, do you want the Purged, removing class bonuses and everything, or do you want to set up Classic Morbius to be the killer and Cloak and Dagger be the support or the setup? Because let me tell you, Fly By Night hurts a lot, especially if there's delirium effects out and people are bleeding. So of course you also have some of the attrition exploiters and everything like that, and that's where Enchantress comes in good because she exploits attrition and delirium, so that's not too bad. So any of the delirium exploiters are good, and it sets Cloak and Dagger to be the setup person, or you can run a setup person, anybody who gives Rising Up, and then she becomes the killer. And truly, Blue Marvel, I mean, he's not really on the radar yet. People need to get him, but that's certainly a possibility. Electro doesn't provide Rising Up, but he can convert her into being electrical, and Electro is capable of doing massive amounts of damage. So those two combined are probably going to be huge, just huge damage output. But then your agent would probably have to run the Neurotrope or the Guardian Insignia to help them out. In terms of PvE, her best friend is Black Cat. Black Cat provides her with some of the biggest bonuses in terms of score. Now, we do know that she might get teamed up with Kuurth and Angrir and Nul, just simply because of the high chance to apply the debuffs and debuffs off of the ISO. So what is going to be a potentially good counter to her? Well, I posed this to the stream a couple days ago. They got a first look at the ideas for this video, and I said, who out of the entire roster works very well against her? And the first thing that was brought up was Invisible Woman. Okay, yes, Invisible Woman with air pressure could certainly be very, very strong. It would at least stop Blackout, but then once she went to do her big abilities, if Finest Hour's up, she's just going to blow right through the shields. But at least Blackout would work, but then you're unfortunately setting yourself up to be Purge Popped. The good thing is, unlike Angrir, the Purge Pop will be single target. So yes, you have Invisible Woman with air pressure. But that's not who I was thinking of. It's actually somebody who is very, very, very highly involved with the opposite Cloak and Dagger. So Cloak and Dagger's Cloak side is really into dark and dark effects. Who runs counter to that? Yup, you guessed it, Carolina Dean. So Carolina Dean and a piece of agent gear, and we'll get to that, can extremely help your team run against Cloak and Dagger. The good thing is she's a blaster, so she suffers no class disadvantage against Cloak and Dagger. She also has a pretty decent ISO called Blinding, chance to preemptively place Blinded and Migraine on attackers. And her biggest thing is her prismatic shield. Immune to blind and dark effects. So that is half of what you get on Blackout. This shield, which is up every 2 rounds, can protect you from some of Cloak and Dagger's level 2. If you combine her with Invisible Woman and you run shields opposite each other, you know, do binary shields, round 1, one of them gets it, round 2, the other gets it, round 3, back to the first, round 4, back to the second. You can keep yourself constantly shielded and run off of air pressure. Now, what is some of the agent gear that can help you out with Cloak and Dagger? Well, definitely the techno-organic endoskeleton comes back into play, much the way it did with Emma. The techno-organic endoskeleton can help you with some of the delirium effects that you face on her level 2. And immune to psychic, everything like that. So, cybernetic body could help, techno-organic endoskeleton can help, and if you did the runaway Spec Ops, you have, it's called the Crystalline Dream. It is the Crystalline Dream. It is 1 ally, ranged in tech, no cooldown. It places Carolina's prismatic shield on somebody and has a chance to apply it to the entire team if you run another piece of the Wayward set. Now, the Wayward set actually has some decent gear in it. And is the high-tech gauntlet one of them? Yeah, so you can run the high-tech gauntlet, which gives you rising up, and it does poison, does iso-corruption. If it gets the follow-up, it runs finest hour and exploits attrition, which is, you know, not necessarily bad. Probably not high adamantium level, but, you know, at some of the lower levels, that's pretty decent. I also believe the Staff of Storms was one of the other pieces. Oh, that's the elemental set. Yeah, the Staff of Return. So the Staff of Return is also decent, as this is the Resurrection Staff. If you think a Cloak and Dagger is absolutely going to blow you up, the Staff of Return helps the Crystalline Dream, and it may resurrect you. So that's pretty decent. Of course, if you had it and you got really, really desperate, there is the Voodoo Staff, which reduces area damage by 30%. That may help with her level 6s. And just, you know, knock it down to more manageable areas. You can run the custom magnetic field generator so that you have a shield that absorbs some of it, and then likely it will penetrate the shield because of the raw damage, and then everybody gets an extra turn, which kind of makes her pay for her big level 6s. Now, what does your agent want to run to help her out? Well, the Neurotrope is definite. That one jumps off of the page. And of course, you also have the Guardian Insignia. All allies get rising up. It's like the Neurotrope. You can call it the poor man's Neurotrope. We also have, and you can see here, I already have it equipped, the Peace Pulsar. Now, the Peace Pulsar was a gold bonus item a while back, but I want to show you why the Peace Pulsar is very good. Short controlled bursts. If you use this early on in combat, she has the ability to do a ranged action as a quick action. So, that means in the very, very first round, you've got 2 ways that you can look at it. In the first round, you could use Bright Blades as a quick action, and then use Blackout. And then in round 2, you can blow them up. So she's giving herself a chance at rising up. She's doing Diminished Resolve, which is a delirium effect. So you could take the highest threat target, diminish them, and purge them. Black them out, all of them. Black them out, all of them. And then in round 2, you can do Shot in the Dark, or pitch black. Because these are both ranged, you can Bright Blade somebody in round 1 for rising up, and then shot in the dark. Or, in round 2, use one of these as a quick action, and then follow it up with the other when it comes off cooldown. That's probably, like, killer damage right there. In round 1, just use Blackout, which will hold on to the Peace Pulsar buff, because you haven't done range yet, and then round 2, bang bang. Solid combo. One of the other things that you can run to help her out is, of course, everybody's favorite buff sealer. You know, take candle, you know, take buffs. The Scroll of Aknazak, or the Scroll of Uncle Zach, as some people call it. Now this one's a little bit more rare, although it was available in the winter. So if you were playing then and you didn't get it, it's your own fault. Scroll of Aknazak, the level 1 of this seals in your buffs. This is really good if you run a rising up team like Heimdall or Blue Marvel. And, you know, this may be fairly good on defense. I have not seen the AI really mess up the Scroll of Aknazak in a while. And you can probably situate it so that the AI is definitely going to use this as part of its kit every single round. Honestly, a tactician suit with quick action would be the way to go on that. And of course, also helping her is the Scroll of Runamoroth, ensuring that all the debuffs that go out stick for a round so that they can be exported. Also, in terms of the mirror match, technically, Cloak and Dagger beats herself up. And there is a reason for that, and that's because she counts as a scrapper. So if Cloak and Dagger goes in on herself on the enemy team, she activates her combat reflexes. So if you do have a mirror match, you can activate your infiltrator bonus and then attack a enemy Cloak and Dagger for a scrapper bonus. But the only thing she can really do with her scrapper bonus is Bright Blades into Bright Blades. She has no other single target after that. So honestly, the scrapper side of herself is the weaker side. But, you know, because it's ranged, if you have a bruiser over there with the Elite ISO, you're not going to cause drains. So you can Bright Blade into a Bright Blade on an Elite or a Drainer, and you won't suffer any consequences. Now, doubling up on a Red Hulk, who is bulwarking, could be bad. I would highly recommend not doing that. So there's a discussion on Cloak and Dagger. I think her biggest threats are right here on the same page with her is Spitfire, because Spitfire is going to go first. We've had some discussion that Loki could be a little bit bad. Loki and Cloak and Dagger combined could be really killer. Loki turns everybody's buffs on their head, and then Cloak and Dagger is just there to like totally screw with the team. Loki Cloak and Dagger, I think, wins the mirror match, because anything Cloak and Dagger gives herself off of her Bright Blades, Loki's going to turn around and make it that much worse for her. So, as far as potential team-ups go, again, exploit Delirium if Cloak and Dagger is the setup person. If Cloak and Dagger is your big hitter, you want to go with Rising Ups. You can bring Hafe out of the woodwork for this, to give her Rising Up and keep her healthy, but like Heimdall, Blue Marvel, Star-Lord are all really big. And then of course your agent has a ton of gear that can help her out. Unfortunately, there is not a lot of Exploit Delirium gear for the agent, other than some of that Madness set. There is a little bit there, and that would be really good if you ran Dr. Morbius, but as you can see here, Dark Forces, these are the dark effects that Carolina helps against: Apprehension, Bane, Dark Void, Doom, Falter, Sin, and Shadowgraph. Remember Sin, folks, we have a worthy Ghost Rider coming, and I guarantee you Sin is going to be part of his kit. Avoiding Doom is also pretty nice. Shadowgraph is fairly new. Apprehension is new. So Apprehension Falter, you don't have a lot of people who can do that, although there are some rings that do it. Shadowgraph, I believe only the elf, Dark Elf, can do this. Excuse me. Bane and Dark Void, of course, a lot of people can do Doom. But Apprehension, Falter, and Shadowgraph are all pretty much going to be Cloak and Dagger based, and I don't think you're really going to see a whole lot of Sin until we get Worthy Rider coming in. Malekith is who I'm thinking of with Shadowgraph. So there you go, guys. I think her biggest threat could be potentially a Draining Red Hulk. Loki turning her buffs on her own ass right there. And any of the high-powered offensive teams. Like, if you run Cloak and Dagger on defense, you may have some issues with Spitlords on offense. If you run her with Mystical, you may have some issues with Angrir. And we do see that happening with Blade. If Blade has his AISO that makes Bleeding Edge magic and ethereal, Angrir does kind of mess up Blade because of that. So keep that in mind. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video here on Cloak and Dagger. I'm sure her team-ups were not particularly surprising. I think it's her counters where I was able to provide you with a little bit of information you might not have thought about before. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Take care.